All right, guys.
Okay, welcome to the Archival Landscapes seminar in Suriname. My name is Alexandra Pucciarelli, and I'm currently enrolled in the Archives program at Queen's College, where much of my work has been focused on ethical collection practices, with special consideration given to disability. Archival Landscapes is a virtual seminar series of the International Archival Affairs Section of the Society of American Archivists. In each seminar, an international guest speaker introduces participants to issues and advancements in their local context, describing the history, operating environment, and unique aspects of archival practice in their country. The seminar series is hosted by the Graduate School of Library and Information Studies at Queen's College, City University of New York. Please note that this seminar is being recorded and will be made available on the Society of American Archivists YouTube channel. Today's seminar will look at the archival landscape in Suriname. We are joined by Rita Tjien Fooh, who is the director of the National Archives of Suriname since 2010. She is a part-time lecturer at the History Department of the Anton University of Suriname, a past vice president and later president of the Caribbean branch of the International Council on Archives. At the moment, she is the co-chair of the Caribbean Heritage Emergency Network. She was also previously president of the UNESCO Memory of the World Program of Latin America and the Caribbean region. In January 2018, she was appointed by the Secretary General of UNESCO as a member of the International Advisory Committee of the UNESCO Memory of the World Program. After the presentation, there'll be a Q&A. Please post any questions you have in the chat. Thank you so much for joining us, Rita.
Thank you, Alexandra. So good day, colleagues from all over the world. As Alexandra just mentioned, my name is Rita Tjien Fooh, and I'm the director of the National Archives from Suriname. Before I start, I want to thank James Lowry for inviting me to speak for the Archival Landscape seminar. So, where is Suriname? The Republic of Suriname. Some facts. The Republic of Suriname, with Paramaribo as the capital city, is situated on the northern Atlantic coast of South America, surrounded by 3 countries, namely in the west, Guyana, French Guyana in the east, and Brazil in the south. The 3 countries, the 3 Guyanas, we are known for our forests and also the fact that we were former colonies from the British, the French, and also the Dutch Empire. So the country has an area of 160,000 square kilometers and is 4 times bigger than the Netherlands. Our official language is Dutch, and our population is about 613,900 people. So it's not 1 million. If you compare it to some cities in the USA or whichever country in Europe, I believe we're a small village if we compare it with the certain countries in Europe. So what about our population? Our population is the most diverse in South America because in Suriname, we have Creole Afro-Surinamese people. These people are the descendants from the enslaved people. We have the Hindustani, those are the descendants of the indentured labor from India, the indigenous people, and the Chinese, the Japanese. They were also descendants from the indentured labor from China and from Java, now known as Indonesia. We also have Jews, Europeans, Brazilians, Haitians, and also recently from Venezuela, Dominican Republic. So looking at our population, you notice that we are very, very diverse, and that the same goes for our culture. So a very short history of Suriname. From 1667 till 1975, we were governed by the Dutch Empire. We were a Dutch colony. the export products were raw materials, sugar, coffee, cacao, and cotton. So during the colonial period, we had about more than 300 plantations here in Suriname, and the cheap laborers were the enslaved people and also the indentured labor from India, Indonesia, China, and so on. So the system of slavery was abolished in 1863, and the indentured labor, from India was abolished in 1916, and from Java, Indonesia in 1939. The independence, we gained our independence in 1965, 25 November 1965, but 5 years later, on the 25th February 1918, the military overtook the government. So we had a military coup, and from 1990 till 1980-70, we had a military regime. The transition from military to democratic government that was set or began in 1991 till present time. So what about our economy? We are still exporting raw materials, but now we are exporting minerals, for instance, gold. And our economy is based on the import of consumables. So let's see about the National Archives of Suriname. For many years, several attempts were made to revive the archives in Suriname. You see now on my slide on the left, that was the old building. It was called the Landsarchiefdienst. That's very old Dutch. And on my right, that is the new National Archive building. For several years, attempts were made by the Dutch government in the 50s, 60s, and the 70s to revive the archive system in Suriname. Several recommendations were written by experts from the Netherlands, but without luck. The turning point happened in 1996 when a huge fire broke out in the capital city of Suriname, Paramaribo, and the fire destroyed several government buildings housing Colonial Archives. For instance, the building of the Ministry of General Affairs, the building of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Parliament building was burned down because of this huge fire that happened in 1996. The Dutch government then reached out to the Surinamese government in 1996, and they informed the Surinamese government that they were willing to fund a new archive building for Suriname. That happened in 1996, but it was until the turn of the millennium in 2000 that some actions were taken by the Surinamese government. So a plan of action was developed to support the Surinamese archives from 2004 until 2008, because on both sides, the Surinamese side, namely the Ministry of Home Affairs and the Archive Commission and the representative from the Dutch government, mentioned that funding an archive building is one thing, but you have also to look at staffing, at expertise, capacity, the law, and so on. So on both sides, the Archive Commission and also the representative of the National Archives of the Netherlands drafted a plan of action to support the Surinamese archives. The main thing was training of staff on various levels and expertise from 2004 till 2008. The training was on academic level. For instance, I myself traveled to the Netherlands to study archive at the University of Amsterdam. Two of my colleagues also traveled to the Netherlands to study archives. There are also several trainings here locally organized on mid-level, and conservators, also digitization experts were trained locally and also in the Netherlands. Another thing was, you saw it before, our law regulation dated 1956 was outdated, and that's why the Netherlands also supported Suriname with the design of a new archive law. The archive law was published in 2006 and the regulation in 2009. This was supported and also drafted by Professor Erik Ketelaar from the Netherlands. And the new archive building, the specification, the term of reference, that was all designed and supported by Royal Haskoning and also with local architect from Suriname. In 2019, the new archive building was inaugurated by the Surinamese government. And by then, we had experts, local experts, we had trained staff, we had management was also trained. The archive law was already published in 2006 and the regulation in 2009. So by 2010, we had everything in place. But we were not satisfied yet because in the archive building, we didn't have the restoration room. So the restoration room was built, constructed in 2012. Afterwards, we also inaugurated the audio visual room. This happened between 2004 and with the overlap to 2013 and 14. So these are the archive regulation. In 2006, the archive law was published, and in 2009, the archive regulation regarding the archive council, the education, the archive repository, and also about the selection of archives, government archives, and the transfer to the National Archives. In 2017, several years later, the ministerial order was published for the selection criteria and the objection for government archives. So with this archive law and all the regulation and order, we had an important tool as archive institution to execute our tasks here in Suriname. So my apologies because these regulations are all in Dutch. So what are our responsibilities? The National Archives Suriname resides under the Ministry of Home Affairs, and every year we can submit a budget about 95,000 till approximately 110,000 US dollar. This is not a great amount in comparison with large institution in the USA or in Europe. But for us, this is the minimum we need to maintain our organization. For instance, for the climate condition, the climate system, for the maintenance of our digitization equipment, conservation unit, and so on. So this is a minimum budget for the maintenance of our organization. You will see later on during my presentation that we are also collaborating with a colleague institution in the Netherlands and also academic institution for certain projects. So the ministry is responsible for the archival policy in Suriname, and the National Archive Council is his advisory council. And the advisory council can advise the minister with regards to the draft selection list or any matter concerning the archival policy. So who are the members of this archive council? We have historians, representatives from the judiciary system. We have also representative from the private archives, representative of the regional district commissioners, representative of the record management, as such also the government archives. So as National Archives, I mentioned it already, we are responsible for the implementation of the archival policy according to the archival law. What are our objectives? Proper management and also promote accessibility of the archive holdings as part of the national or the documentary heritage of Suriname. We have about 8-kilometer archives in custody here at the archives and 65 terabyte on data. We are also having the government and the private archives who are our users. Those are the genealogists, the students, the academics, and the teachers. They can visit our reading room here on site, but they also can visit our website and also submit their question or their request to the staff of the reading room. Another objective is to promote awareness with regards to the importance of archives to the general public as historical evidence and for good governance. In this regard, I have to say that Suriname doesn't have Freedom of Information Act. There is a draft that was recently submitted to the National Assembly, and I hope that the National Assembly will discuss this act as soon as possible in the next year, in 2022, and publish it by the end of 2022. So what are our responsibilities with regards to government archives? The management of the current archives, that is the responsibility of the ministries and the government agency. As National Archives, we inspect these current archives. We have a unit who regularly visit the ministries and the government archives to inspect their repository, the condition of the material of their archives, the accessibility, and so on, and also advise them on drafting their draft selection list. with regards to appraisal, selection, and disposition. This is the responsibility of the ministry and the government agency, but the National Archives are also advising them with the appraisal, the selection, and the disposition. The transfer of the to the National Archives of the the transfer of the archives to the National Archives Suriname is after 10 years after their creation. And I have to say that we have a backlog for, I think, about, I believe, 20 years. It's a huge backlog because the ministries and the government agencies are still not ready with their appraisal and the selection of their archives. That is a huge concern of the staff, and we have to come up with a solution as soon as possible. Recently, we had a discussion with our colleagues from the National Archives of Curaçao, and their solution was to transfer all the archives of the ministry and government agency without appraising them, but they hired several students of their archive school to appraise and select these archives. So although it's not our task as National Archives to do this, I think we have to make a choice. If we leave the archives at the ministries and elsewhere where the condition is very bad, the risk is very high that we will lose these archives. So at a certain point, as an organization and as an archival institution, we have to make a choice and also make certain priorities. So as soon as these archives are transferred to the National Archives, the public have full access to these archives. For certain archives, for example, the Notariate Archives, the archives of the Civil Registry, the Land Registry Archives, not all the archives are accessible. You have to have permission from the creators to access the archives. So the National Archives of Suriname, if we look at the organization and the units we have a restoration and digitization unit, an audiovisual unit, unit where the staff are making description, the unit for inspection and acquisition. We have an education and PR unit, IT and maintenance. In total, here at the National Archives, we have 59 persons working at the various units. So looking at the services, our services are also online and on site in the reading room. What happened with the archives that are not accessible due to the bad condition. At the moment, we are restoring them and also digitizing these archives. And we have also an internal information system, National Archives Information System. All the archives that are digitized, that are already digitized, are accessible in our reading room, and not online yet. At the moment, we are working on a new website, and I hope to launch the new website by February or March 2022. So outreach to the public. We are frequently organizing lectures, certain lectures on, for instance, the history of Suriname, recent publication, guiding tours for students and also for academics. We recently also had the exhibition on the celebration or commemoration of the 46th independence of Suriname, organizing workshops. Recently, we also started with a workshop to draft an emergency and preparedness plan for heritage institution here in Suriname. Although it is not our task to organize certain workshop, for instance, this disaster plan for heritage institution. In fact, this is a task of the Director of Culture to organize these workshops. But in my capacity as director, but also as past president of the Caribbean branch of the International Council on Archives, I experienced how natural disaster can affect heritage institutions here in the region. And here in Suriname, we also have to be prepared. And that's why I reach out to my colleagues here in Suriname and organize this workshop for these colleagues. So our restoration room and digitization unit, our staff are trained in the Netherlands, and I have to say that the head of the restoration room, Ms. Sangita, also organized training, conservation training for the heritage institution here in Suriname with the support of the National Archives of the Netherlands. So I mentioned already training, conservation, and record management. I mentioned already that we have a backlog with the appraisal and selection of government archives. So that's why as National Archives, we organize record management training for the staff of the government agencies and the ministries. We started with this training in 2011. I think we stopped in 2018, and next year we will start again with the record management training. So that is very important because without trained record management at the government agencies, at the ministry, it's very challenging to appraise and select the archives. So our goal is to have fully trained staff at the government agencies, as well as conservation staff at the heritage institutions here in Suriname. And naturally, we also are working with regional as well as international organization in the Netherlands, in the Caribbean, and also in Asia, namely with India, the National Archives of India, with the National Archives of Indonesia also. So our archive holding, looking at our archive holding, we have archives dating from 1667 till the 1990s. So we have archives from the colonial administration from 1667 till 1975. The government archives from after 1975 till 2000, the slave registers, emancipation registers, manumission registers, also immigration registers from Chinese, Portuguese, Indian, and Japanese, private archives, and I'm very happy to say that recently we acquired also the archives of the first president of Suriname, Dr. Johan Ferrier. We also have the archives of the former president Ramdat Bisir. We have archives from private organizations, and so on. Furthermore, we also have audiovisual collection. Recently, we acquired audiovisual collection from the Department of Culture Studies, and they have tapes recording from the Japanese cultural tradition. They still have cultural tradition from the Indian, the Hindustani, and also from the Afro-Surinamese people. So these collection are also part of the collection of the National Archives of Suriname. We also have a large collection of newspapers and government publication. So I already mentioned that we have a large part of colonial archives from the colonial administration. This is very important to share with you. Early 20th century, the colonial archives, about 802 meters, were transferred to the Netherlands because of the inadequate housing and care here in then the colony of Suriname. There were no adequate repository, there was no care, and the state of these archives was very bad. So the colonial government then decided to transfer all these archives to The Hague, to the National Archives of the Netherlands. Lucky for us, the government signed a transfer protocol, and in the protocol it was explicitly mentioned that the Republic of Suriname was the proprietor, and that these archives belong to the Republic of Suriname and were to return to Suriname after we have adequate repository and an archive building in Suriname. So I already shared that beginning 2000, we started with the term of reference of the archive building. So before the building was finished, we started to inform the National Archivists of the Netherlands that Suriname expected to have these archives, the colonial archives, returned as soon as we inaugurated the building. So we started the negotiations from 2006 till 2009. And on the picture on the right, you see the in the middle, the Ministry of Home Affairs, Minister Hassan Khan. Next to him, Minister Plasterk from the Netherlands, shaking hands when they signed the agreement to repatriate or to return these colonial archives to Suriname. Next to the Ministry of Home Affairs, you see myself, younger then, and then also that was Martin Berendsen, then the National Archivist of the National Archives of the Netherlands. We signed the agreement, and we agreed that the archives, 802 meters, were to return within 7 years. And in these 7 years, the archives have to be restored and also digitized. So we received the first batch in 2010 when we inaugurated our new archive building. And between 2011 and 2017, all these archives were repatriated to Suriname. The original, the authentic one, as well as the digital copies. And the digital copies consisted of 55 million scans. All these archives are now available on the website of the National Archives of Suriname and the National Archives of the Netherlands. So what about our regional and international collaboration? Suriname is also a member of the International Council on Archives, and as such also member of the Caribbean branch of the International Archives. We are, as National Archives Suriname, we are very involved in CARBICA with the projects, and recently with the launch of the Caribbean Heritage Emergency Network, CHEN. In January, we will launch our new website. We have several projects going on, and one of them is to install a hub for the Caribbean for disaster management. I hope we will reach that goal in 2022. 2022, yes. Furthermore, with the National Archives of Curaçao, Trinidad, Guyana, and all the regional archival institutions, we have good understanding and working relationship. With the Netherlands, we have a special bond because of our historical relations. So with the National Archives of the Netherlands, we have a close relationship, and until recently, we signed a new working program with them, consisting of digitization of relevant material, not only in Suriname, but also relevant material in the Netherlands. That's important for the history of Suriname, for training and also support with other archival related issues we are having here in Suriname. With the National Archives of Indonesia and India, our people, part of our people, the population of Suriname, they are originated from Indonesia and India. And because of this, with the National Archives of Indonesia and India, we also have a close relationship, especially exchanging relevant archival material. With several NGOs also, with Suriname House, based in the Netherlands. At the moment, they are conducting a project to publish a book about the Calcutta letters. In our archive holding, we have the archives of the Agent General for Immigration, and the Agent General for Immigration was responsible for the well-being of the immigrants here in Suriname. And the indentured laborers, the people who are writing letters to their family in India. Also, family in India were writing letters here to their families in Suriname. So these letters are still in the archives of the Agent General of Suriname. So what Suriname House is doing is they will publish these letters next year. I hope that it will be in English, so the diaspora people in India and elsewhere can read this publication. Another project for the coming years with Suriname House is also a project called Diaspora Connect. The immigration register of the Indian indentured laborers are already on the website. So what Suriname House is planning to do is connect the information on the immigration register with also information from the Calcutta letters, because in the Calcutta letters, also the address, the name of the villages are also included in the letters. So connecting the Calcutta letters with the information that is on the database of the immigration register is very important. And I recently had a meeting with a representative from the Suriname House, and he's planning to use Google Map to locate these villages in India, and by doing so connect the descendants of the Indian indentured laborers here in Suriname with their family members in India. So this is a very important project I'm looking forward to. So with the Black Archives in the Netherlands, we also have a good working relationship. Their stakeholders are the Black community in the Netherlands, and their archive holding consists of Black writers, publication, poets, and so on. And we plan in 2020 to organize or collaborate for the exhibition with the National Archives of Suriname, but because of the pandemic, this publication was put on hold. So I will now elaborate on several projects of the National Archives of Suriname. One of the main projects is the project Maak de Slavenregisters Openbaar, that is Dutch. In English, this is Make the Slave Registers Accessible. For many years, we had these slave register or registers of the enslaved people here in custody, but it was not accessible. There was not a description. So the National Archives of Suriname collaborated with the Radboud University of the Netherlands, also with the Anton University of Suriname and the National Archives of the Netherlands to make these registers accessible. Our digitization unit scanned all these registers, and together with the Radboud University, they launched a crowdsourcing project to make this register accessible. So 1,500 volunteers participated in the project, transcribing these the scans, and now these registers are accessible online on the website of the National Archives of Suriname and also the website of the National Archives of the Netherlands. These are very important sources for the population here in Suriname, not alone, but also everywhere in the Netherlands, and perhaps also for the people living in the Africa region. For your information, the National Archives of Suriname, National Archives of Curaçao, St. Maarten, and the Netherlands recently submitted nomination for the International Register of the UNESCO Memory of the World to inscribe the archive holding, the documentary heritage of the enslaved people of the Dutch Caribbean in the International Register of the UNESCO Memory of the World. We are very optimistic about that, and hopefully next year we will receive positive news. So another project, with regards to the slave register, an estimated 80,000 people are registered in the Suriname slave register who lived in slavery in Suriname between 1830 and the abolition of slavery in 1863. The slave owners were required to register the people in their possession, stating name, date of birth, and mother's name, and information about birth, death, release, sale, and other information to the status and worth of people in slavery. The register belongs to the collection of the National Archives of Suriname, and as I mentioned before, the access was very limited to the public, and that's why we digitize these archives and make them accessible online. So another project that is the Saving the Future of the Suriname project. That's a collaboration between the National Archives of Suriname, again, the Radboud University, and also the Anton University. This project is funded by the Gerda Henkel Stichting. And the focus of this project is on the preservation of the population record in the National Archives of Suriname. So these records comprise of civil records, birth, marriage, death certificates, register of people with Suriname citizenship, and the register of indentured labor from the various countries and also from the West Indies in the period 1830 till 1950. And this belongs to the most used documents here in Suriname, both by academic and the general public. Due to the severe neglect in the past, these records are not described. There is no index, and they are often damaged. If you look at the picture on the right, you see the civil registry register. And we started with this project, the Saving the History of Suriname project. We already digitized the civil registry records. And recently I also handed a scan or an external hard drive with the scans, about 370,000 scans to the civil registry office here in Suriname. So we already digitized all these civil registry registers. And in the Netherlands, there is also a crowdsourcing projects going on, and the volunteers are also transcribing these scans, and hopefully the online version, the database, will be launched also in 2022. This is the Citizen Science Project, launched in September 2021. And this is the largest citizen science project, which historians together with volunteers are mapping the entire population between 1813 and 1950. I have to say volunteers from Suriname, from Curaçao, and also from the Netherlands are working together to transcribe these scans and also put it in a database. Historians want to gain more insight into the impact of slavery and the colonial era in the Surinamese society. And this project builds on the Surinamese slave register already available online. And the result will again, as I already mentioned, online for a wide audience. And based on the complete inventory of the civil registry of Suriname, from the period 1830 till 1950, all the free inhabitants of Suriname will be mapped and also make accessible. And for more information about this citizen science project, Mr. Koen van Galen from the Radboud University is the project coordinator, and from Suriname, the University of Suriname, together with my person, are the coordinators of the project. So another project I already mentioned was developing an emergency preparedness and disaster management plan for heritage institution in Suriname. 17 heritage institutions participated in this workshop or this training. And this training or this workshop was conducted by Emily Lumas from New Orleans. What we did was we identified threats to collection, prioritized collection. We also had some training with salvage techniques to wet materials. And our objective is to finalize with the disaster management plan by May 2022. This is very important looking at the climate change condition in the world, and especially here in the region. For heritage institution, this emergency preparedness plan is a must. Another project from the National Archives of Suriname is the project the crowdsourcing project, Vind Jezelf, Vind Su. In English, this is Find Yourself, Find Suriname. This is a public project that was set up by us. And the main goal of this project was to raise awareness of the archives that is managed by us. And especially the archives was returned by the Netherlands between 2010 and 2017. Because we have to raise awareness about the importance of these colonial archives to the public. These archives are in the handwriting are in old handwriting, colonial handwriting, and the regularly student or academic are not able to read these archives. So we involve the public in this crowdsourcing project to transcribe and process the already scanned archives of the Commissariat Inland Population by means of transcribers handwriting recognition software by the volunteers. And after the 19th century archives were transcribed, they became more readable. And the project coordinator, Ms. Audrey Hofweg-Koenders, she also wrote a thesis about this. And the result was very surprising because I already mentioned that the handwriting was from the colonial period by and the stories in these archives were hidden. So with the transcribers handwriting recognition software, these archives became visible. So for Suriname, this is an opportunity to write or to rewrite our history, because all these colonial archives were written and kept from a colonial perspective. By transcribing these archives and making them accessible for the general public, we can research and also rewrite our history. So what are our challenges? I will not say that we have financial challenges, because for the National Archives that is custom, but looking at all the challenges, the most important one is backlog and appraisal, selection, and disposition of government archives. I already mentioned this. Government agencies here in Suriname are using their own software program for their record management, for their information management system, and there is no regulation in this. So our objective is to draft regulation for government agencies, naturally also with the support of the e-government commission of the Republic of Suriname. Lack of expertise here at my archives with regards to digital record management. And because we have a backlog also in the transfer of the archives, we expect that we need to expand our archive repository very soon. And as a manager, as a director, you have to look forward and plan and also expect certain things to happen. So that's why I recently submitted a project proposal to expand the archive repository of the Republic of Suriname, the National Archives of Suriname. These are our challenges. Mainly, it has to do with capacity building, it has to do with regulation, it has to do with finances. And I believe for a National Archives institution, this is customary, and my colleagues all over the world are experiencing all these challenges also. So thank you. This is in short my presentation of the National Archives of Suriname. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that. So I've got one quick question. Okay, so can you tell me more about building and maintaining relationships with your counterparts in the Netherlands? Sorry.
Excuse me, Alexander, can you repeat that question?
Okay, yeah, I can also type it as well. I said, could you tell me more about maintaining and maintaining relationships with, sorry. Can you tell me more about building and maintaining relationships with your counterparts in the Netherlands? Like,
yes, I mentioned already that we have good working relationship with the National Archives of the Netherlands, not only the National Archives, but also the City Archives of the Netherlands, because, you know, there is a certain bond we share. If you look at the colonial history, there are certain bonds, and the archives in the Netherlands, they also have certain, I have to say, I'm sorry, the word, they have certain priorities in maintaining the relationship, because it's also a priority for them to maintain the working relationship. For instance, at the moment, we have one of our staff members who are studying in the Netherlands, who are doing a master in archives management at the University of Amsterdam, and also digitization projects. I already mentioned that we are digitizing our certain parts of our archive holdings here in Suriname that are also relevant for the Netherlands, but for the Netherlands, it's also relevant that we digitize these archives, because part of this history is also here in Suriname. That's why we maintain this good working relationship with them. They have certain interests, and also we have certain interests, and by the end of the day, there is a win-win situation between our two organizations. So I see that there is a question: volunteer opportunities for certain for the citizen science project. The volunteers is still needed, and also for the project Find Yourself, Find Suriname, we still need volunteers, but these archives are written in Dutch, so I apologize now for the English-speaking participants here, but for certain we need more volunteers for the citizen science project and Find Yourself, Find Sue projects. I think there was also another questions from Kimberly, the challenges of appraisal. Yes, for certain, digital records. At the moment, we are looking at the paper archives, but the digital records is also challenging, because there are no regulation, and government agencies are using their own software. The appraisal, I'm not addressing appraisal now. So that's why, to reach out to support government agency here in Suriname, we need capacity, we need expertise. So in the coming months, for certain the coming 2 years, one of the main priorities of the National Archives is to work on capacity building with regards to expertise on digital record management. Here in Suriname, there is no professional association of archivists. we joined CARBICA, and I think the challenges I mentioned also applies for the colleagues in the Caribbean region. And perhaps it's a good idea that as CARBICA, we look into this matter and look for certain solution, because, for one country to organize training and so on with regards to digital information management, I think it would be better if we join forces as CARBICA members and organize trainings and workshop for the Caribbean region. So there is another question from Kolya. Did the Dutch government destroy? I don't have any knowledge of that, but looking at the inventory of the 802 meters, they are still intact. They are complete. So I believe that the Dutch government didn't destroy any archives from the colonial period. Okay, there's also another question from Kimberly. Okay, you mentioned the need to ask permission from the creator to provide access to archival records. How long does the process normally take? I mentioned already the archives of the notariate, the archives of the land register, civil registry. So because of the privacy of certain archives, there is an embargo on certain periods. So normally it takes a week before the users, the public, can receive access or gain access to these records. No, for 30 years old, the public doesn't need any permission.
Hi, so we should probably wrap up. Does anybody have any final questions? And thank you so much for this presentation.
Yeah. Thank you, Alexandra, and apologize because English is not my language, or normally I speak Dutch. If it's not very clear, and for any other questions, you also can send me an email. So thank you for joining me today, Alexandra, and also James. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.